So good afternoon, delegates, my fellow speakers, members from the Empiric Business Media, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is the most difficult part of the session. So it is the most intangible element of the session from that perspective. It is like akin to solving the world hunger problem. So the culture, right? So, and the deliberations that I'm going to dwell on in terms of through the slides that I'm going to present is based purely from my personal experiences. I definitely have smartly and eloquently copied from a lot of research papers, and very pleased to see that how my personal experiences and all the engagements that I had corroborate very well from the findings from those research surveys. So the topic that I'm going to dwell on is very germane in the context of not only digital or business transformation, but very germane and relevant in the context of upheaval and churn. And this upheaval and churn is led by societal changes. And what I meant by that is that if you look at society, now the prior speaker talks about instant gratification. So look at the society. We always tell COVID, Russia-Ukraine war, or geopolitics and all, I always believe, and we always believe, that society always moves forward, right? It never goes back from that perspective, and latest the banking turmoil that we are seeing. So, and the important thing is the demographics part. So in situations that we are all operating, maybe developing countries like India will be catching up, but definitely in US, you have baby boomers and millennials and Gen Zs are working together, right? They're sharing the same workplaces. So societal changes. So next is the customer and the consumer experiences, and that is shaping rapidly. The third is the business model changes. Now, business model changes, and everybody talked about, my prior speakers and all, they talked about this as a service, X as a service, A as a service, B as a service, and Z as a service. So business model is definitely changing. When I look at technology, everything is a service today, right? And the last but not least is technology-led disruption from that standpoint. So before I go into the core part of my deliberation, I'd like to use a couple of slides to set the context to enable us to have a better appreciation of the topic in hand. Now, there are a million definitions of digital transformation, and maybe this is one of those, right? So please bear with me, but I just wanted to highlight this definition from a perspective of culture. So digital, right, is nothing but a synonym of the pace of change that is happening in today's world, driven by the rapid deployment and adoption of technology. And transformation in this context is how an organization responds to, and most importantly, shapes change. That is very important, right? Responsiveness and shaping change are a bit of a paradigm shift from that perspective. And innovates, reinvents, and most importantly, reimagines, then simply enhance and support traditional methods. That is very important, because in the morning half of the presentation, the first two speakers of the day definitely highlighted that anything and everything is not digital, right? And transformation is a very critical word. So there are two elements. I think Gartner has defined it very well. So one end of the spectrum, you have optimization, and another end of the spectrum, you have transformation. Optimization is your productivity, efficiencies for better business outcome, but transformation is radically thinking differently, not doing different things, but doing things differently, right? So the most important thing is that digital transformation is a journey, and the journey trumps the destination. What I meant by that, sometimes we get boxed into the idea that it is a project management exercise. But project management has a start date, it is an end date, and in terms of, we define project management through the lens of scope, time, and cost. But we have to think of digital transformation as a product. A product continuously evolves, right? You upgrade the product, you take out elements away from the product, and maybe the product metastasizes into a completely different things. So it is a continuous journey of evolution, and there is no starting time and there is no end time from the standpoint. That's why it is a journey. Now, what is believed? Strategy creates competitive advantage. Now, I'm not going to give you a Michael Porter speech here, but that is what strategy is. And digital strategy, we call technology strategy, digital strategy. But at the end of the day, any strategy has to create a value which will help you to outsmart the competition in the category that you choose to participate. People and a culture of innovation sustain it, the operative word being culture. And technology and communications are the means by which it is delivered. So technology comes just as an enabler, or whatever we will discuss that is it an enabler or is it an asset from that standpoint. So competitive differentiation of digital enterprises do not come through acquisition or adoption of new technology, but it comes from their integrated set of digital capabilities, the value that they create from their digital capabilities, and a culture that embraces change. So you have to think of our digital enterprises as a company which is always in a state of beta. It's a continuously state of flux. So going to the meat of the discussion in terms of the role of culture in business and digital. Now so definitely one of the speakers, I think from Tata, if I may recollect, the differentiation between digital and business is getting completely blurred, right? It is a confluence of technology and process and a whole gamut of the things which makes this entire ecosystem work. So when organizations embark on a journey of transformation, be it digital or business, what they are doing technically is transforming their culture. Culture is an integral part of transformation, right? So what is cultural change? What are the components of cultural change? And how do we enable this cultural change is something that we are going to talk about. The first and foremost is mindset shift. The first step in the cultural change process comes with the mindset shift. What is the mindset that we are going to create for the organization of the future? Is it a mindset of only risk and cost, or is it a mindset of value and differentiation as well? Why I talk about risk and cost is that in good old times, not too long ago, and in fact it is residing in many traditional companies as well, is that technology is considered to be something which manages risks and manages cost and is viewed as a cost center. But how does that transformation happen in terms of mindset, moving that technology will create value and create differentiation? I think many of the speakers spoke about McKinsey study or BCG study or whatever study that 70% of technology or digital transformation fails. The reason this fails, to me, based on my experiences, because most of my career, right, 33 years to be precise, of my career, I've spent 31 years or maybe 32 years more on the other side of the table. Only for the last 15 months, I'm wearing the CIO hat from that standpoint. And based on my experience, why it fails is, one is top-down decision making. Second is silos, organizational barriers and silos. What happens is that we keep on optimizing the individual pieces and parts, but we sub-optimize the bigger piece. The third element is, I call this technical debt, which is called legacy technology, and there are a lot of discussions on legacy technology. That definitely is a barrier. The fourth element is being short-term. Now, one of the pitfalls of putting a business case, and business case is absolutely important, not only from a pure financial standpoint, but from a value creation standpoint. But if you look at a business case development from a net present value or a IRR or whatever metrics of finance you use, the pitfall is that organizations becomes very short term. And this is not, digital transformation is not like a silver budget that you will have a payback in half a month. There are definitely use cases, but it is not a transformation, right? It is more of an optimization. So definitely the short-term mindset, the lack of skills and talent, and we'll talk about that. The other element is values and culture, because what values and culture, because culture definitely eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the last and not least, not invented here. What I meant by not invented here is that adoption of new ways of working is always challenged by well-established and traditional ways of working. And this is absolutely the reality of today. So, and then I'll give you a couple of examples. If an organization moves from a small enterprise to a large enterprise, moving from an entrepreneurial culture to a corporate culture, moving from a mindset of a gunslinging, shooting from the hip type, they want to become much more repetitive, sustainable, and structured. And that is a mindset shift, and it cannot happen overnight, but it is a change, right? The second part can be that if an organization wants to migrate to a collaborative culture, and moving from all decisions are fed from the top to a decentralized way, that is huge cultural shift. And that happens over a period of time because letting go, right? We call it as a leadership, lack of leadership or leadership, right? So that is a mindset shift. The second part is business process changes. Now we have to, because I am an integral, because I have been born and brought up in environments and different companies, mostly traditional companies, because I never worked in pure technology companies. But we always have a tendency to look at business process changes through a piece of paper. What is my level 1? What is my level 2? What is my level 4? What is a functional document? What is a BRD document? What is a fit gap analysis and all? But we have to look at business process changes through the landscape or through the lens of a cultural shift. How does your business process influence your culture? Or most importantly, or conversely, how does your culture drive business process improvements? How can we bend the culture to support the improvements in the business processes that we are driving? For example, a culture we talked about of collaboration, innovation, and transparency cannot happen until unless your business processes across the enterprise are vertically, horizontally, laterally, diagonally integrated. It cannot happen, right? So business process change, mindset change, coupled with the technology layer has to absolutely go, and this is cultural change. Because even if you do technology, but your business processes remain very fragmented, you will not leverage. So the question is that how do we move away from a mindset of a point solution to an application solution to a system solution? So it is like the difference between steam engine and electricity. The steam engine, you have to reconfigure everything to ensure that your equipments and everything at the source of power. But with the advent of electricity, the entire model had changes, because now your equipments you are not required to displace, the electricity is coming and feeding the machines, right? So it is huge from steam engine to electricity. Now this is important. The general organizational competencies, and many speakers have spoken about that what is the skill and competencies that we are building the organizations for the future. The question right now is, in terms of skills, there will be a lot of jobs. I think that there's a great book which I have gone through, which is called Globotics Upheaval, The Future of Work by Ian Goldsmith. He talked about occupations, professions, and jobs, right? So for sure, professions and occupations will never go away, but there will be multiple of jobs within these occupations and professions will completely be obliterated by automation and technology. However, the skills and competencies are important in those areas where it is not amenable to automation or digitalization. For example, your complex thinking, your problem solving, your leadership capabilities, your strategic thinking, then adaptive learning, resilience, those skills will be in very high demand. Now, we always tell that, is AI going to eat up our all jobs? The answer may be no, but is our jobs are at a risk from people or associates who learn how to work with AI? The answer is yes. So think of, during COVID times when remote working and all, if you can do your job sitting anywhere in the world, anybody can do your job sitting anywhere in the world. Now that is very scary from that standpoint. So there are skills which are very important to understand and absorb, because decision making, so decision making is what? Is a combination of your prediction and your judgment. A lot of prediction can come from data, AI, ML, whatever we call it, the technology buzzwords. But judgment is something, until unless you codify the judgment, and the codification of that judgment can hamper for simple decisions. But for complex decisions, the codification is not possible until unless you train the model with billions and zettabytes of data, right? So organizational competence is a very important part of the cultural change. And how do we change culture? I think we have to look at through the lens of people, process, technology, and data. Because at the end of the day, the change has to permeate across the length and breadth of the organization. And let's keep in mind that culture is a choice. How do we be deliberate about the cultural change? So when it comes about technology, sometimes what we happen, we embrace technology, we adopt technology without understanding the ramifications of the technology, or what does the technology do to the culture. And similarly, what is the culture we are trying to drive? Is the technology complementing that? And we talked about the process. Now in terms of people, it can result into organizational redesign, change in roles and responsibilities, skilling, upskilling. Now there are many ways you can bring in the skill, but research has shown that the least disruptive and the most cost effective is upskilling your own associates from their standpoint. It is easier said than done. So let's take the example of company is implementing an HR solutions, and you have a bunch of business partners and human resource agents who are feeding a lot of human resource data in your system. And when you implement a human resource solution, you are changing your business model more to a bit of a shared service and a bit of a self-service analytics. So in that case, the human resource agents who were involved in all this data, what is their roles and responsibility going to be? Now we can easy to tell that they will have another roles and responsibility. What is that roles and responsibility, right? Now with that being said, the cultural framework, if you look at the culture, so how do we change culture? The cultural framework gives you the perspective of people, process, technology, and data, and ease the elements. So it is like a hub and spoke model where every element is contributing to the culture, and at the same time it feeds, it is a symbiotic relationship from that standpoint, right? And there is a culture which is influencing all elements. So are we having a performance management system that encourages innovation, encourages risk-taking, right? We talked in the morning about failing fast. I tell that, okay, fall forward, right? Failing fast or fall forward, don't fall back, fall forward, and try to learn as much as possible. The most important thing is leadership, right? At the end of the day, are we building a leadership culture which develops leaders, who empowers people as opposed to top-down decision making? So the cultural framework is a very important component in how should you drive the cultural change. And if you look at the variables of the cultural spectrum, so you have one end of the spectrum and you have and nothing is right or wrong, it depends on at what stage of the journey that you are in. So standardization versus flexibility. Now companies who are entrepreneurial in nature, as they grow this organization through acquisition of new business, entering into new markets, they always believe that we should have standardization, repeatability, sustainability and all. And companies which have become very big, they always feel that at the same time there has to be some flexibility, right? Otherwise it becomes too much of bureaucracy. Corporate versus entrepreneurial. Collaboration versus individual competencies. So many organizational culture advocates the idea of heroism, right? Hero mentality. Because that hero mentality gives a lot of power in their hands, right? maybe intended or unintended, I don't know. But most importantly is collaboration versus individual competencies, performance versus nurturing, right? So we always tell that this is a winning sport. This is a sport. In a sport, or in a winning team, everybody wins, and in a losing team, nobody is a winner, right? That sort of a thing. Digital versus manual, we talked about that. Inward versus customer focus. At the end of the day, the competitive differentiation lies in the value that you are creating, not only for the business, but for your end customer or consumer. So are we more inward looking, or we are more balanced between outside in and inside out? Incremental change, we talked about that in the second slide in terms of the business transformation definition. It is not about incremental change, it is about a disruption. So I was going through an article, I think that was posted in the LinkedIn. There was a great snippet that electricity was not born through continuous improvement of a candlelight, right? So it was a disruption from their standpoint. And tenure versus new blood, right? And I talked about the baby boomers and the Gen Z and all. So usually the organizations, when they go through digital transformation, they have seen some 10 change impacts. Now I'm starting with the least important to the most important on a relative scale. So in a digital transformation, the least important element is technology. And this is not shooting ourselves on the foot, we become CIOs or something, but believe me, technology is not a constraint these days. Second is technical infrastructure. Absolutely, we talked about cloud and on-premise, and definitely there will be different change management. As you are moving through the cloud, you have to make redundant your data centers and servers and database architectures and whatnot, and similarly vice versa. There will be a lot of change management even if you stay on-premise, but you are adopting a new technology, but that size of the databases, the servers might be completely different relative to the applications that you are running. New IT skills, it definitely talks about upskilling in terms of your IT, because they have to, as somebody said in the prior sessions, that there was the distinction between process and technology. We cannot tell I am a process champion, I am a technology champion. The question is that are you a domain champion who understands a bit of process and technology? Reporting relationship will change, right? Organizations now these days, CIOs have a seat on the table. CIOs previously used to report to CFOs or maybe human resource, but a reporting relationship will change and is changing. A business process we talked about. More end-to-end integration. That is very important, because one of the important things that we saw in this COVID times, and I'm using my supply chain and sourcing hat, in terms of seeing that how we had navigated through the COVID crisis, and one of the key impediments was the end-to-end integration was not there. Semiconductor industry is a classic example where the car manufacturers never had any clue where the semiconductors is going, but everything was going, right? But at the end of the day, when they had to grind their assembly lines to a halt, then everybody knows the importance of semiconductors. So new roles and responsibilities will definitely emerge. We talked about the CHRO experience. Customer, now one thing we forget about this entire journey as we get into this digital transformation, that what value does it add to our customer and consumer? Now when we were implementing, in the process of implementing our CRM solution or a B2B e-commerce solution for our North America business, there was a lot of hands on the room and telling that, oh, we want an Amazon experience. Now, the question is that, okay, guys, sit back and relax. Amazon experience that you see is a bit of a tip of the iceberg. But underlying that Amazon experience is a bunch of interconnected applications and system architecture, which is making that front end. So having the front end digital without really having the back end talking to that, it doesn't make sense, right? So, but at the end of the day, new business models, right? New business models. So I always believe, and I'm sure many of us in this room believe, that your competitors are not necessarily from the industry that you are in. So when Toyota launched their Lexus model, which is basically the high-end, the luxury version of Toyota, the dealer representatives were not taken to a Lamborghini showroom or a Ferrari showroom. They were taken to a Four Seasons hotel, right? Because the experience of selling a Lexus is a completely different relative to relative to what you can imagine from your company. So like the way we are in the automotive space, so we always tell, okay, we are in the tire business, but I always tell the people and my colleagues and the leadership team is that don't consider that when you are selling your tires to a Caterpillar or a John Deere or a Mahindras of the world, that you are competing against with your other tire manufacturers. You are competing with your other spare parts, right? So, and business models are very critical from the standpoint, and we tell the technology as everything as a service is a complete disruption. So how is a tire as a service, right? From that standpoint. And last but not least is culture, which we talked about. That is a part of that is a main part of the discussion. So the value creation model is undergoing a shift. What is the value? It is a source of competitive advantage, right? So established companies who have tested decades of success through established process and systems of working, the biggest challenge for them is the rigidity of understanding what they know and what they don't know, and letting go of things which is no longer serving them. So how do we pivot away from what has made you successful in the past to moving towards a direction what is going to make you successful in the future? There is a term called moat, right, with Warren Buffett uses, economic moat. So I call it digital moat. So one of the key components of a digital moat is to creating an ecosystem an organization can learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is your digital moat, right? So if you have a vision of a value creation model for the future, so don't go with only technology to realize that value, go with the entire length, breadth, and depth of your digital capabilities to realize the value. In that case, digital does not become an enabler, digital becomes an asset. So I'm saying that in the very near future, when companies report their income statement and balance sheets, there will be a line item called digital assets. So we always represent how much of finished goods inventory we have, how much of raw material inventory we have and all, but how much of digital inventory are we having, right? So digital assets is a very important thing, and legacy companies always struggle with to understand what they should retain and what they should let go, right? Because letting go is a very important part, and that is cultural. So if you look at this, I'm drawing the next 2-3 minutes, I'll close my session, but if you look at this, it's a busy page in terms of change management strategies and tactics in digital transformation. But based on my experience, before we embark on any digital transformation journey, there are 4 or 5 things which we should be cognizant of, and the former speakers have talked about this subject very eloquently. First is a strategic alignment. Don't put the cart before the horse, right? So technology is an asset, but ultimately, what is your business strategy? So having an alignment of the strategy. Second is assess your cultural readiness, where you are in this journey. Now, the culture can be blame and shame culture, right? The culture can be a bit of a hero mentality culture. The culture can be in terms of leave and let leave, right? And the culture can be nurturing leadership, whatever culture. So that is very important to understand. The third element is that preparing a case for change. Why are we doing what are we doing, right? The governance is very important, the fourth element. And the last but not least is that communicate, and communicate why have we embarked on this digital transformation. Because I was reading a book called 1 Hour Strategy. In that book, there is one takeaway called, the more complex the problem is, the more critical mass of the organization needs to be involved, right? So it has to be a bottom-up, but digital transformation is definitely a CEO agenda from that standpoint, but there has to be a meeting point between the bottom-up and the top-down from that standpoint. So before I conclude my session, I leave with that quote, right? Marshall Goldsmith is a very reputed management guru and a leadership expert. The digital savvy companies, or whatever we call it, digital enterprises, they have the ability to understand that what they should, while being respectful of the past, they should let go the past and embrace new ways of doing things and what is going to make them successfully and disrupt the company, the competitive architecture, and move forward in this journey. And this calls for a lot of cultural transformation. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.